who violated their own constitution by secretly allowing the U.S. to station nuclear weapons in Japan during the Cold War. So this was the payoff. This was the CIA payoff network to these U.S.-sponsored dictators in Asia.
We're going to go to break and come back and keep going through your article that really puts all the pieces together, that clearly this guy's an intelligence operative. We'll look at, once he's in college, how he's sent to Pakistan, clearly in all sorts of secret ops. I mean, this is extremely clear. But also, if you really study deep intelligence, it's normally a family affair, because then the whole family's connected. There's the peer pressure of the family. You can never leave. And so we see that pattern throughout history at the highest levels of intelligence. We'll continue to look at Barry Soetoro, a.k.a. Barack Obama, the president, on the other side of this quick break with Wayne Madsen. You've got to read the report. Look at the photos. It is extremely damning. It's all at Infowars.com and WadeMadsenReport.com. Bottom line, before we go through more of the history, more of the evidence of this, what type of asset is Obama? What was their plan? Because he was nested at the highest level, both sides of his family, at the biggest foundations that themselves created the CIA. The way I read this in my past research, it appears that from very early he was put into the highest level schools being developed for where he is now.
And anyone who remembers the movie The Manchurian Candidate, that's exactly what they were trying to do in that movie, setting somebody up. But in this case, it looks like it was the CIA it had their own Manchurian Candidate and groomed this individual for higher office, and he eventually got it. Now, one of the things that I found was some CIA files from the 1970s referring to behavioral science work being done by the Central Intelligence Agency. And one of the universities, and this comes from Richard Helms, the director himself, one of the favored universities for behavioral science work, and let's face it, that was out of the Office of Science and Technology. That's MK Ultra. That was Dr. Sidney Gottlieb's operation. One of the favored universities for this research was the University of Hawaii, where Barack Sr. met Ann Stanley Dunham. And
so you're saying he was trained in mind control, or he's under mind control?
Oh, I don't know, but I mean, we know what MK Ultra was. It was extreme behavioral modification.
Yeah, the L.A. Times reported the Unabomber Theodore Kaczynski was in that program.
Well, another university, some of the other universities mentioned in this were Yale, MIT, University of Michigan, and UCLA, and the University of Hawaii is singled out as the fifth favored university for this work by Richard Helms. Now, this work was done through the Advanced Research Project Agency, which was working, the guy, Lieutenant Colonel Kibler with the U.S. Army, was working on things like remote viewing. You saw the movie Men Who Stare at Goats. That was what that was all about. So it was a multifaceted project that but it was all into this weird, bizarro stuff.
Well, for me, the cherry on top, and we haven't covered 10% of the evidence in your article, is that the way they hide all his records, the way he goes right into college but is never there. He's all over the world. He's in hot zones. It looks like they were training him in all sorts of, in-the-field training from a very early age.
Well, the CIA front company in Honolulu actually came up with a false corporate history, said that they had been doing business in Hawaii since it was a territory. Everything was fake with that particular company. When the company went bust and accused of being a Ponzi scheme, where have we heard that recently? Certainly we have with Stanford. We heard it with Enron. And here we had another one, and BCCI. So here we have an early example of the CIA setting up this financial firm to make these payoffs out of Honolulu. And when it goes bust, the innocent investors are all defrauded.
And Grandma's running it.
Well, she's working at the Bank of Hawaii, which is laundering the money. She's running the escrow account at the Bank of Hawaii, which is where the agency is placing the funds to transfer to their boys over in Asia, these dictators and these favored politicians. I would also note that AIG, which he bailed out, which was started by Ken Starr's great uncle in Shanghai was also a CIA front. Doing the same thing in Asia, from China to Japan to Korea and everywhere else.
Well, look what Top Secret USA confirms what you'd already reported on for years. Close to 1 million secret private spies in the U.S. alone with the highest security level. That's 1 out of 300 Americans.
Absolutely. So, you know, we look at all this, and it's fascinating. I also found a very rare copy of a book that was written in 1968 and actually favorably reviewed in an article in the Boston Globe in 1971, and it lists 3,000 CIA agents around the world, lists the stations, and some of the most active were Jakarta, and Lahore, Pakistan, and Karachi.
And the book lists a bunch of Obama's family's bosses.
Bosses, right, including the guy that was running the microfinancing work out of the U.S. Embassy in Jakarta at the time. So we have a lot of connections. I also noted that one person who I know is listed in the book, Peter Ernest, who runs now the International Spy Museum here in Washington.
Stay there. I want to go over all of it when we come back and what it means. Okay, Wayne Madsen, in layman's terms, recap this evidence, go over other areas, some of the new things you've discovered. You've been getting into archives. I'll just leave it at that. A lot of things are newly declassified on a routine basis. They do everything they can to cover up his history. Now they shred his mother's passport that would be stamped for where she really was when he was born, and then release his passport, which, you know, he's already had a passport before. Even if he got it through fraud, that's easy to do. This proves nothing, but it's their attempt to say, look, we're not going to give you the original, you know, with his feet stamped on it and the doctor's signature, you know, of his real birth certificate. We're going to give you his passport to supposedly shut up the birthers. And you've got this entire history of being groomed, the entire family on every side, deep inside the big foundations, working for Geithner's dad, the Rockefellers, Annenberg, all of them, you know, all the top globalists. And then you've got even more in this 3-part series.
Well, you know, we go back to February of 2008 and the big U.S. State Department passport scandal, where some contractors working for a company called the Analysis Corporation were caught looking into Obama's passport files. Now, that company at the time was headed by John Brennan, who used to be with the CIA, came up with a lot of this rendition program under Bush, and now he's the Deputy National Security Advisor. How convenient. You know, they said, oh, well, Hillary and McCain's passports records were being looked at. I think that was a diversion. That was you know, make it look like they were going to involve him. I think the fact is they were going in to see exactly what Obama had, if anything, with the smoking gun as far as his passport files. And I was getting ready to say before the break that one of the names in this book of 3,000 active agents during the late 50s and 60s is Peter Ernest, who's now the director of the International Spy Museum. And remember, Obama took his 2 daughters to visit the Spy Museum. Everyone said, now, isn't that a little odd? Why would he take them there? Well, maybe it was old home week for him.
So what does this mean to the American people, Wayne, to have someone who clearly was manufactured and put into power? I mean, obviously they can blackmail him, but that's not even needed. He's just completely controlled.
Well, yeah, I think that's the problem. He should have, look, presidents and vice presidents or senators or members of the House do not require security clearances. The mere fact they're elected, their staffs require the clearances, but they do not. But that job falls to the press to vet these people, and the media failed miserably during that campaign. On what I reported out of Chicago with his private life, and now with this, his background with the agency, this was all available back in 2008, and no one, you know, pursued it because everybody was listening to this brilliant orator. And, you know, beware of these brilliant orators. History is replete with them, and they've turned out to be nothing more than demagogues when they've gotten into office. We know many cases of it throughout recent and even ancient history where that's happened.
Continuing, there's a lot of other areas of your detailed three-part series that we haven't covered yet. Kind of recap it, get into some other areas and connections we didn't go over. And then when we talked last night, you said you're still doing more research. There's even more, that there's mountains of this, and just every place you turn, CIA, 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 CIA.
Well, let's look at his father, Barack Sr., who was brought over in this Airlift Africa project. Now, his mentor in Kenya, who was assassinated in 1969, Tom Mboya, basically selected Barack Sr. and others over more qualified candidates. And I've got a very obscure Reuters piece from London in 1960 where one of the opposition leaders in Kenya says, wait a minute, some of the people who were passed over had better academic qualifications, better certificates than the people who were selected. Well, it's obvious why they were selected. They were selected, and in the case of Obama Sr., he's married with a kid and one on the way already in Kenya when he arrives in Hawaii, and he marries Obama's mother, who's just graduated from high school. It's very clear that this was some sort of a CIA operation to get those two together. You got to wonder what kind of parent would put their own child up for auction because the agency finds it's important to do. So, but Mboya is interesting because he basically was spying for the CIA at all these Pan-African meetings, and basically he was trying to limit the influence of some of the leftist African leaders who were thought to be in the pocket of the Soviet Union and communist China at the time, and particularly Kwame Nkrumah of Ghana, who was also overthrown in 1966 in a CIA coup, just 1 year after Sukarno was overthrown in Indonesia with the help of Lolo Soetoro, Barack's stepfather, and whatever work his mother was doing for USAID and other entities in Indonesia.
Now, we talked last night, and I said, it seems to me that they knew that they would build him up as this messianic leader, and then they study societal movements, individual psychology, mass psychology. The architects know that he would then not deliver the milk and honey and the restored economy and the end of torture, the end of wars, with his advisors and who put him in power. They were always planning to not deliver any of his promises and then politically destroy him. And you concurred with me, so I want you to expand on your view. What was their plan for Barry Soetoro, a.k.a. Barack Obama, and what does their master plan encompass for the nation and for their front puppet? More balkanization, more division, selling Africa on AFRICOM or AFRICON being set up. I mean, what's the overall program with Plan Obama?
Well, the CIA regularly uses people who are called futurists. Now, this isn't the weird kind of thing where people look in. These are subject area experts who try to look to see where technology, where politics, where population, where demographics will be 20, 30 years into the future.
And they seek to steer it. They seek to already know what people are going to want to do, where culture is going to bring them, so they can be pre-positioned to dominate those systems. That's what Google is.
So if we go back in time to 1960, we're looking at the CIA looking at the demographic changes of the United States. Increasing African-American population. I don't think they really banked on the increase in the Hispanic population. Obviously, that came later. But
well, wait a minute. It's come out that the Ford Foundation, billions, Bill and Melinda Gates, tens of millions, to Madsen and La Raza, Ford Foundation going back 60 years, creating those groups.
Right. Well, I think the one thing, because of the civil rights movement, they were looking at, look, Martin Luther King was the leader of the African-American movement, the people in this country. He broke with Johnson in 1967 over Vietnam, steered very hard to the left, and as a CIA, I'm sure said, God, we can't, if we're going to get a leader, we can't have a Malcolm X, we can't have a Martin Luther King Jr., we have to make sure that when we have one, in line to become president, somebody that we can basically control.
Let me back you up.